Have you ever wondered how a movie remake could go so disastrously wrong that it unites both fans and casual viewers in collective disappointment? Disney's Snow White remake seems to have achieved just that, becoming one of the most controversial live-action adaptations in recent memory. From the moment the project was announced, skepticism surrounded it. And now, with the trailer out, that skepticism has turned into outright rejection. The numbers speak for themselves. Despite garnering 5.3 million views in just 3 days, the film has amassed over 588,000 dislikes, a staggering figure that reflects the widespread disdain for the project. People who were already wary of Disney's live-action remakes have found this one particularly offensive. Disney's remakes have been hit or miss, often criticized for being unnecessary, but this time, the backlash feels stronger than ever. Unlike past reactions, which were filled with mild annoyance, this one is pure rejection from both die-hard Disney fans and casual audiences alike. The primary issues seem to revolve around 3 things: the poor visual execution, the baffling marketing choices, and, perhaps most significantly, the PR disaster caused by lead actress Rachel Zegler. In many cases, actors taking on iconic Disney roles will at least feign excitement and nostalgia, speaking highly of the original movie while expressing their honor in carrying the legacy forward. That was not the case here. Instead, Zegler has been at the center of controversy for her comments about the classic film, and her attitude has only worsened the situation. Rather than embracing the 1937 animated classic, Zegler openly criticized it in multiple interviews. She referred to the film as outdated and problematic, rolling her eyes at the story's core themes. Most notably, she dismissed Snow White's romantic subplot, suggesting that the prince's role was irrelevant and even labeling him as a stalker. While updates to classic films are expected, completely disregarding the essence of the original raises eyebrows. Her comments painted the new version as a complete departure from what fans loved about the story in the first place. Naturally, audiences didn't take kindly to these remarks. If a remake is supposed to appeal to those who cherish the original, why would the lead actress publicly denounce the source material? The backlash was swift, and instead of taking a step back and reassessing her approach, Zegler doubled down. She dismissed critics, implying that their negativity stemmed from misogyny rather than legitimate concerns about the film's direction. Beyond the PR debacle, the changes to the story and characters have also raised concerns. One of the most shocking revelations was Zegler's statement about the male lead. Andrew Burnap, who was cast in the role, may not even play a prince, and at one point, Zegler suggested his character could be cut from the movie entirely. This decision drastically alters Snow White's narrative, eliminating the central love story that has been part of the tale for decades. Additionally, Zegler made controversial statements regarding the 7 dwarfs, suggesting that the traditional depiction of them as helpers would be flipped. Instead of Snow White caring for them, they would be the ones performing the housework. While modern interpretations of fairy tales are often welcomed, these comments further alienated fans who felt that the film was being rewritten without respect for its roots. Instead of simply modernizing elements while preserving the charm, it appeared as though the filmmakers were attempting to erase beloved aspects of the story entirely. The marketing strategy for this remake has only worsened the film's prospects. Rather than presenting a compelling vision of how the film respects its origins while offering something fresh, Disney has failed to generate any real excitement. Clips and promotional material have done little to alleviate concerns, and many argue that the visual effects and set designs look uninspired. Instead of feeling magical and timeless, the film appears to lack the enchanting quality that made the original so iconic. As a result, Disney is now facing one of its biggest challenges yet. With their recent track record of underwhelming releases, the company cannot afford another high-profile failure. Audiences are losing patience with these remakes, and Snow White might be the tipping point. Fans are no longer willing to accept rehashed versions of their favorite stories, especially when they feel those versions actively dismiss what made them special in the first place. The fallout from this situation may have a lasting impact on Disney's future projects. The company has been struggling with declining audience interest in recent years, and a poorly received Snow White remake could further damage their credibility. Many are beginning to question whether Disney's reliance on nostalgia-fueled remakes is sustainable. If they continue to disregard fan feedback and push forward with controversial creative choices, their brand's reputation will continue to erode. At this point, it's difficult to see how Disney can salvage this project. With so much negativity surrounding the film, it's unlikely that it will perform well at the box office, given the damage already done. Instead of learning from past mistakes and delivering quality adaptations, Disney seems to be repeating the same errors while making new ones along the way. As audiences, we can only wonder, will Disney finally listen to fans and course correct, or will they continue to alienate their core audience with each misstep? The company risks losing the magic that made it beloved in the first place. For now, all we can do is watch and see where they go from here. Was this really the Snow White remake that anyone wanted? From the moment this project was announced, skepticism was at an all-time high, and for good reason. Disney's track record with live-action remakes has been shaky at best, and at worst, completely unnecessary. But this time, things are different. This isn't just another uninspired remake. It's a film that has been almost universally rejected by both Disney fans and general audiences alike. And honestly, Disney has no one to blame but themselves. From the very start, the movie was plagued with questionable decisions, from strange marketing choices to the overall direction of the story. But the biggest controversy of all, the way Rachel Zegler, the actress playing Snow White, handled the entire situation. When an actor is cast in a major Disney film, especially a remake of a beloved classic, they usually show some level of enthusiasm. They emphasize their love for the original, speak about how honored they are to be part of the legacy, and generally make an effort to connect with fans. That's the bare minimum. Zegler, however, took the opposite approach. In multiple interviews, she made it painfully clear that she had no love for the original 1937 animated film. She openly criticized it, calling it outdated and problematic. She even went so far as to mock the story, particularly the romance between Snow White and the prince, suggesting that the original film had problematic elements. Rather than respecting the source material, she seemed determined to tear it down, alienating fans in the process. It wasn't just her comments that caused backlash, it was also her attitude when facing criticism. Instead of acknowledging that perhaps her approach was a bit misguided, she doubled down. She dismissed those who criticized the film as toxic men who couldn't handle the idea of a strong female lead. But the reality is, no one was upset about Snow White being portrayed as strong. The problem was that the film seemed intent on gutting everything that made the original special, turning it into something unrecognizable. And then there are the numbers. The long-range box office tracking for Snow White has been released, and the outlook is bleak. Right now, projections estimate an opening weekend between 63 and 70 million. While that might sound decent, it becomes disastrous when you realize just how much money Disney poured into this movie. Thanks to public records from filming in the UK, we know that Snow White's budget exceeded 270 million before marketing costs. Since studios only keep around half of their box office revenue, a 65 million opening would leave Disney with around 32.5 million, not even close to breaking even. For comparison, Maleficent, another live-action film inspired by a Disney classic, had an opening weekend of around 70 million in 2014. Adjusted for inflation, that would be about 92 million today, far outpacing Snow White's projections. And to make matters worse, early projections are usually optimistic, meaning these numbers could drop even further as the release date nears. But Disney's troubles don't stop there. Their marketing strategy for Snow White has been bizarre, to say the least. Normally, for a major film like this, there's an aggressive promotional push, early screenings, cast interviews, and widespread advertising. But with Snow White, Disney has been unusually quiet. When they finally did release footage, it only made things worse. The CGI was heavily criticized, the costumes looked cheap, and the overall tone felt completely off. Even die-hard Disney fans began to distance themselves from the project, and online reactions were overwhelmingly negative. This backlash isn't coming from just one specific group. It's not just the so-called anti-woke crowd or niche internet commentators. The criticism is widespread, with audiences across the board expressing disappointment. The issue isn't that Disney wanted to modernize the story, it's how they went about it. The 2015 Cinderella film is a great example of how a classic can be updated while still maintaining its heart and charm. But Snow White, this feels less like an adaptation and more like a complete deconstruction of the original film. Unless something drastically changes, Snow White is on track to become one of Disney's biggest box office failures. And the consequences could be massive. Rumors are already circulating that if Snow White bombs, Disney may reconsider its future live-action remakes. Projects like Hercules and The Sword in the Stone might be put on hold to prevent another disaster. And honestly, that might not be a bad thing. The past few live-action films haven't exactly been massive successes. The Little Mermaid barely managed to break even, and The Marvels was an outright financial catastrophe. Disney can't afford another massive loss right now. Audiences aren't asking for yet another uninspired, agenda-driven remake. They don't want a film that feels more like a lecture than a story. They want something that respects the magic of the original while adding fresh elements in a way that feels natural. Disney had every opportunity to make Snow White special, to create a film that honored the legacy of the 1937 classic while appealing to modern audiences. Instead, they delivered a movie that feels like it was made by people who don't even like Snow White in the first place. At this point, it's hard to see how this movie avoids disaster. Unless there's a last-minute miracle, it's shaping up to be one of the most significant flops Disney has ever faced. And the saddest part, they did it to themselves.